We are here today and are very happy, and it's a great honor to be here with you tonight as a member of German Bundestag to celebrate the work of a journalist whose career stands for courage, professionalism, and the defense of independent journalism. First of all, I would like to thank the Southeast Europe Association for organizing this important award and for creating such a space where we can celebrate something that is increasingly under pressure in many parts of the world and also here in Europe: independent journalism. We live in a time of growing authoritarian tendencies, information manipulation, and a rapidly changing digital environment. In this environment, journalists and media professionals are facing enormous pressure. They face political interference, economic pressure, online harassment, hate speech, intimidation, and in some cases, and not only a few, physical threats. Solidarity Award for Journalists is and was a very good idea, and I thank you from the Southeast Europe Association very much. But let us also remember something else tonight. There is no shortage of courageous people who stand against disinformation, stand against defamation, and against attempts to silence critical voices. And I can tell you, as member of a jury, we had a broad range of these people, and I would like to acknowledge that this jury made a very complicated decision. It was a close race, but we have to have the demand for one winner of this prize. But I can tell you, there is no shortage of courage. There are journalists who investigate corruption, uncover abuses of power, and defend the public's right to know. Many of these journalists will not receive this award tonight, but they deserve our recognition, they deserve our respect. And above all, they deserve our solidarity as well. This is a very, very good idea, and the idea beyond this prize. Because solidarity means understanding that the struggle for freedom in a country is never only a national matter. It concerns all of us. Tonight we honor an outstanding journalist who has dedicated his professional life to this principle. Dear Igor, congratulations on receiving the Solidarity Award for Journalism from the Southeast Europe Association. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not finished, don't worry, I have more pages to go. Believe me, relax, take some water. But I wanted to have this effect because it's really something that comes from the bottom of my heart. Your career, and I go on with the Laudatio, your career is a story of commitment to professional journalism under very, very difficult circumstances. For more than 3 decades, you have defended the idea that journalism must serve citizens, not those in power. You have shown that the task of journalists is not to make politics comfortable. It is to ask questions, to verify facts, to investigate, and it's about ensuring that citizens have access to reliable information. Your professional journey is closely connected to one of the most important traditions of independent journalism in Serbia. Thank you for this very much. Like many journalists of your generation, you came through the school of B92. A newsroom during the 1990s demonstrated that journalism could remain independent even under enormous political pressure. That tradition continues today, and you have been one of the people who carried it forward. As the long-time news director of N1 Serbia, you helped build one of the most important independent news organizations in the country. For many citizens, N1 became a rare source of information in Serbia's media landscape. Reporting that is based on professional standards, editorial independence, and the willingness to ask difficult questions. N1 has reported on issues of fundamental public importance, on elections, on corruptions, on environmental conflicts, on social movements, and the decisions of those in power. And this is precisely why independent media like N1 have faced such strong pressure. Serbia is a country today with a vibrant civil society, talented journalists, and many citizens who continue to demand those standards, democratic standards. But at the same time, the environment for independent journalism has deteriorated significantly. Over recent years, power in Serbia has become highly concentrated around one person, around President Aleksandar Vučić and his political system. This concentration of power has also affected the media environment. Large parts of the television landscape are dominated by outlets that provide overwhelmingly favorable coverage of the government. Independent journalists and critical media organizations, by contrast, are frequently attacked publicly and portrayed as politically hostile. It creates a climate in which critical reporting becomes more difficult and more dangerous than ever. Independent media have faced different forms of pressure. I said it in the beginning: hostile campaigns, economic pressure, regulatory obstacles, and attempts to undermine their credibility. Journalists covering protests and political sensitive issues have faced intimidation and threats. Reporters Without Borders, and was just mentioned, has repeatedly documented these challenges. In its World Press Freedom Index, Serbia continues to rank among countries where political pressure, attacks against journalists, and a polarized media environment seriously affects freedom of press. This is not only a problem for journalists, it is a problem for democracy itself. Because without independent information, citizens cannot make informed decisions. Without scrutiny, power becomes less accountable. Without accountability, democracy becomes weaker. The importance of independent journalism became especially visible after the tragic collapse of the railway station, of the railway canopy in Novi Sad in November 2024, where 16 people lost their lives. This disaster became a turning point for Serbian society. The protests that followed expressed a profound demand for accountability, transparency, and the respect for rule of law. During these events, independent media played an essential role. Journalists reported from the streets, investigated unanswered questions a prosecution couldn't answer, and ensured that citizens could follow developments beyond official statements. N1 was one of these outlets that provided continuous coverage at a moment when many people were looking for reliable information. This is why independent journalism matters. It does not only report on democracy, it helps sustain democracy. Dear Igor, you received this award at a particularly important moment. After years of leading one of Serbia's most respected independent newsroom, your departure from N1 has raised serious concerns about the pressures facing independent media in the country. But our legacy cannot be measured only by a position or a title. It can be measured by the standards you defend, by the journalists you supported, by the trust you helped to build. Leadership in journalism is often not visible. Editors do not always appear in front of the cameras. Their names are not always on the front page, but they create the conditions in which journalism can exist. They protect editorial independence, they defend professional standards, and they stand with their colleagues when pressure increases. Throughout your career, Igor, you have demonstrated that credibility is built through consistency, not through political loyalty, not through convenience, and sure not through bribes, but through integrity. Ladies and gentlemen, the European perspective of Southeast Europe is based on fundamental values: democracy, rule of law, human rights, and fundamental freedoms. Media freedom is not a secondary issue in this process. It is one of the fundamental ones. A country cannot be fully democratic if journalists cannot work freely. A society cannot make informed choices if citizens do not have access to independent information. Supporting independent journalism is therefore not interference. It is partnership. It is an investment in democratic resilience. Dear Igor, tonight we honor not only your achievements as a journalist and editor, we honor your courage to defend principles even when doing so was very difficult. We honor your commitment to facts in an age of manipulation. And we honor your belief that journalism remains a public service. Today, by recognizing your work, we also send a message to journalists across Southeast Europe. Your work matters. Your courage matters. Your commitment matters. Democracy needs you. Dear Igor, thank you very much for your integrity. Thank you very much for your perseverance. Thank you very much for defending these principles that make journalism possible. And thank you for reminding us that solidarity is not only in the name of this award. It is a responsibility shared by everyone who believes in democracy, freedom, and an open society. It is a privilege to see you receive this award, the Southeast Europe Association's Solidarity Award for Journalists from Southeast Europe. Congratulations, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. So I have the, in German, Urkunde, in English, certificate. Damn, without ChatGPT, I'm lost. So I will read out what is written here. Southeast Europe Association Solidarity Award 2026 for journalists from Southeast Europe. We proudly award Igor Božić for his outstanding work and his contribution to more democracy, rule of law, and press freedom in the region. Berlin, 9th July 2026. Manuel Sarrazin, President of the Southeastern Europe Association. Congratulations, Igor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have to tell you that in my life I never heard so much flattering from some politician to journalist, you know. And I'm so pleased. In some way, I'm feeling a little bit embarrassed because, you know, we didn't used to it. But thank you so much. All the words that you said were so right and so correct that I can say thank you again. I have to thank you because you choose Serbia in this particular moment, which is not good moment for journalism in South of Europe. And I will tell you that last year in Serbia was not only a year of protests because of the canopy fell down, it was also a year which journalists become targets. A total 344 incidents against journalists were recorded, including 44 physical attacks, almost 4 times more than the previous year. Yet, throughout the entire year, only 3 convictions were handed down for attacks on journalists. So this is the environment in which journalists in Serbia do their work. And the threats do not come only from anonymous individuals. There are also relentless smear campaigns by pro-government tabloids, direct attacks by senior public officials, and behind-the-scene interference in media ownership and editorial independence. That is why this award is not a recognition of one and for one individual. It belongs to all my colleagues who choose every single day to remain true to the profession, who continue to do their work with courage, even when the personal cost is very high. Unfortunately, despite the fact that the streets of Serbian cities may appear calmer this year, the atmosphere has not changed. On the contrary, threats and pressure have continued. Journalists investigating issues of public interest still work in an atmosphere of intimidation. Some have even been summoned for questioning these days over their reporting on the alleged use of sonic weapon during the protest in March last year. At the same time, those who threaten journalists or attack their property in the overwhelming majority of cases remaining unidentified and unpunished. Just in the past month, the son of the professor and journalist Dinko Gruhonjic had his car deliberately vandalized, and one journalist, Danica Vucinic, received a letter containing horrific death threats. Journalists working for a small local media outlets have faced death threats and the physical attacks. Bern journalists and university professor have been receiving messages saying, "The black hand has marked you." For people in Serbia, this carries a powerful symbolic meanings. The Black Hand was one of the most notorious secret organizations in our history, associated with oaths of loyalty, death, and political violence. The purpose of these messages is obvious: to provoke an even greater sense of fear. As you might expect, the responsible for these threats never been found. The sense of impunity has not disappeared. These cases send a clear message to every journalist that doing professional work, especially independent and critical journalism, may put not only their own safety at risk, but also the safety of those closest to them. Nowhere in the world is so easy to be a journalist. Those of us who worked during the 90s remember what it was like in the Balkans. Yet many journalists in Serbia feel that today is even harder, that the pressure is greater and often more subtle. The goal of those who threaten, intimidate, and the attack to journalists is clear: to silence independent voices, prevent the exposure of corruption and crime, and stop the truth from being heard. Today, solidarity among journalists is more than a professional value. It is a safeguard for democracy itself. When a journalist is left alone in the face of threats, it is not only a person or one newsroom that is under attack. It is a right of public to know. That is why this award is not only recognition for what we have done, it is also a reminder that the struggle for free journalism is far from over. Thank you for recognizing this.
Thank you very much, Boris Mijatovic, Igor Božić. I now have the pleasure to have another of our vice presidents joining us, Professor Florian Bieber from the University of Graz. And we're now going to have a chance to have a discussion with our laureate on the current situation in Serbia and in the Balkans. So, Florian, you have the floor here.
Thank you. So congratulations also from my side to the award, and we have decided to have an opportunity to use the opportunity to reflect a little bit more on the issues which have been raised both in the remarks by Boris Mijatovic as well as by your response, and to reflect on the status of the media freedom in Serbia, and maybe also on the position of N1, the situation today, and also what outsiders can do about it, how they can support or help support the media situation in Serbia, and as was mentioned also, the related situation for democracy in Serbia. So in our conversation, I would first say that we have a bit of an exchange, and then of course there's a lot of expertise in this room. We'll open up also to questions from here to round off our discussion. We've heard a few pointers of the state of media in Serbia. You've mentioned smear campaigns, physical attacks, the slander by pro-government tabloids. So when outsiders often look at the numbers, they say, okay, there's a decline. But I would like us to look a little bit into this black box of what the state of media looks like in Serbia today. And maybe more to start with, as a journalist yourself, as somebody who's followed this also from the 90s, and you evoked the situation of the 90s, and I think what I remember very poignantly saying that in some ways the situation now is worse than in the 90s, of course, which is striking considering the dire situation which existed in the 90s, is when did you as a journalist notice this decline of the media situation under the current government? Because this current government has been in power now for 14 years, and there's been a gradual decline. When was it as a journalist when you realized the situation is changing? Media freedom is becoming again something which is under threat.
Well, the story is long because when we N1 started it in 2014, even before the launch of the TV station and web portal, the campaign against the journalists who gathered to make a new media started in tabloids. Like those are because at that time the Americans were the majority owners, the KKR investment fund. So they said in the headlines on the tabloids, those are CIA journalists who's gonna attack the country. You know. So from my point of view, it deteriorated as soon as even before we started. Then we filmed one situation during the gay parade, even though we didn't broadcast at the time, but we prepared, you know, it was like preparing to launch the program. So we filmed what's going on the street that very specific day, and we filmed one incident. In that incident, the brother of president and the brother of actual Ministry of Finance were involved with the police, and then we get a call from secret police chief to not to broadcast anyhow that incident. So we refuse it. We publish it on a YouTube channel, and they then tried, and then they started a campaign that we are attacking the family of the president and the family of Minister of Finance. So they were, what I'm trying to say, that they were start from the beginning to somehow take the control over the media. And by doing that, when they, I can say, come up to the hard and tough guys who don't want to leave them to do whatever they do with the media in Serbia, then they started campaigning against us as a media, and later on personal against any journalists who have any kind of critic reports. But by doing that, it was not only statements and behavior of the president whenever we try to ask him a question, but it is also I've just looked at your media last night a little bit, and I can see all political parties debating about the issues. So we couldn't have that debate on N1 for years, because the ruling party simply reject and didn't want to send any of the official. I very often mentioning the situation during the Corona period, when we all were together in the same problem, right? And we tried to interview the doctors from medical facilities, and they coming out from the hospital, standing in front of the microphone, and then receive a call from the Ministry of Health and saying, no, for them you cannot speak. So they are not even trying to defend themselves against the critical questions and tough questions, but they are trying to suppress the basic right of the people to know the basic information, even in that very sensitive time like coronavirus crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the time that we were living all these years, and of course the narrative that we are traitors, that we are foreign mercenaries, that all like that we are Ustashas, people who are knowing this from the Second World War. They know how bad verb is when you say to someone that is doing that, and then they're creating the atmosphere against the journalists that of course that they can be attacked on the street. What's happening, of course, very very often.
Thanks. Yes, and I mean there was, besides this kind of obvious visible pressure, I think one of the striking features, which and one experience, but also many other media, is the subtle pressure of using ways to prevent media from having ability to communicate to citizens, right? So so maybe you can tell us a little bit more, because I think it's very important to understand for people outside of Serbia that it's not just the threats against journalists, which of course are the most visible part, but there are many more subtle ways in which a government like the current one in Serbia is putting pressure on media, the sale of cable providers and not allowing independent media to have access and all these. So maybe you can share some of these experiences and tell us a little bit, how are these less visible tools, which are not so obvious, working to reduce the freedom of expression?
Yes, everything is not in the statistic, because you cannot measure some things, and that is the creating the atmosphere that you mentioned. For example, if now I want to start a new media and I have an investor, I cannot have any kind of free, even cable channel, not even the national frequency. But nobody will give that to me, because it is monopolized by the state, by the state telecom. So they are carrying all the cable networks in Serbia. They are not hiding it, and of course it's beyond any kind of standards. But it is like that. And one is currently only in one network. It covers only 45% of territory, but it used to be a part of the same group, that network called SBB. Now it's not. It's sold, and immediately after they sold the network, Serbian Telecom, which is a state-owned company, cut off N1 from one of the platforms that SBB got at the time. So they're just shrinking the space that people can see the free independent media, right? And now if you want to prepare and make your own self-independent media, there is no platform for it. Even if you try to do a digital one, you have to know that the people who are older than 50, 55, the most frequent voters, they are not having any kind of possibility, because they're not using digital networks, digital platforms to watch the program. They used on classic television, which is free and cheap. They're not using, let's say, modern gadgets so far. So it is, of course, the control is the basic thing that the government wants, and Boris knows that politicians want to control media all over the world. But it's the matter of democracy and the state in the country. Will they allow them to do that? And of course, journalists in Serbia can survive only in some smaller organizations and mostly founded and donated by some foreign NGOs. So that's why investigative portals still exist in Serbia, but in a lower scale. They are also under huge threats, like Krik or Birn. Not only threats, but by financing organization. They lost, for example, the USAID funds last year. So the market is now even thinner than it was. And necessity of the people to be informed is bigger and bigger, because the last independent voices are going to be probably very soon shut down.
So, on the surface, of course, there are a number of national frequency TV channels which are in private ownership.
Yeah.
There's a public broadcaster which is formally at least supposed to be independent. So how does a government manage to control all of this media sphere to make sure that there is actually no space for critical reporting? Because on the surface it all looks, if one doesn't see the content and the obvious bias, it would seem at first that maybe the preconditions are there for an independent, pluralistic media landscape, but the reality is very different. So how does this control actually work?
Well, it is when you have the owner who is connected directly to SNS, like for example, owner of TV Prva and B92. I mean, he is a member of SNS. His brother was very high official in SNS. So it's so obvious that they're actually working for one party. Or the owner of the most popular TV Pink, which is combining entertainment and information and news program all the time, with a huge propaganda. Not only propaganda. When I'm saying propaganda, it's not only in favor of the government. It will be fine if it is just like that, but it's also against anyone who is thinking different, so tough and so hard that you can see that program like a supporter of Vučić, and like a football hooligan who wants to demolish someone else, physically after watching those propaganda programs. It is not just like in favoring of what government is doing. So, but on the other hand, we now have for I think 2 years Informer TV station, which I cannot. It becomes popular between the SNS supporters right now, but I cannot explain you by the words how horrible is that program. I can just picture you one scene when one student was beaten in the government facilities last summer, by one of the chief of the police at the time. By intimidating that student, the chief and editor of the Informer showed the naked picture of that student, taken somewhere from social networks probably, just to intimidate her on that level, saying why who somebody threatened to this kind of girl, you know, that kind of horrific public speech that I cannot call it even a media. It's something something more horrible than propaganda media is.
Yeah, so you're really mapping the whole outline from the more subtle mechanisms to the more very, very direct, very blunt mechanisms. So how do you see the role of N1 having developed under your editorship in Serbia in this particular context? You've given some example. The government refused to talk to N1. N1 was the only one of the places where actually, or one of the few places where critical voices could be heard. How did you manage this challenge of how can one be independent in a political and media environment where there is no independence otherwise?
Yeah. Well, we were trying to be present on every single event and to send our reporters on every single possibility to ask the question to the government or to ministers or to president himself. And most of the time, Vučić take over credibility for himself. Like he didn't allowed. In Serbia, you nowadays, in last, I think, 5 years, you cannot have the press conferences of the ministers. You cannot ask the question on the press conference to, for example, Minister of Energetic or Health. Vučić is answering on every single question for every single topic. So we were forced to send our reporters on only on his press conferences. It was unique. So that's why and how we were trying to make the government voice to be heard. Of course, the oppositioners and also the student movements can be seen only on our program and or used to be seen on our program because those protests actually attract a lot of viewers, a lot of audience who wants to see what's going on the street on very turbulent days. So we saw the opportunity and give to audience opportunity to broadcast the events from the street live, but not only with the small reports, but we broadcasted it as a live event for 2 or 3 hours, even one. We were 24-hour broadcasting a protest that was on one of the main Belgrade street that were blocked at the time, and it was a huge success because no one ever did it. 24 hours of the program alive, and we saw that audience noticed it, and that audience wants to be informed by having those live events. So that was like a trademark that that N1 is going with, and I think that government and ruling party actually saw that as a huge threat to what they are doing, because they you can have hundreds TV stations that are saying something in favor of the government, but one TV station who is showing in the live program what is going on is much more powerful than your 100 TV stations that are lying. And that's why people noticed our program very, very quick, because we are a news channel. I mean, N1 is a news channel, and like CNN, it is most watched on the breaking news events. So that's the logic of news channel. So we follow that structure, and I think we succeeded because of that.
Mm-hmm. And so when did you, to turn a little bit to also the the pressure on N1. You mentioned that from the very beginning, N1 was a target of attacks by the regime, but you were able to operate. But when did you feel, was there a turning point when the pressure became, when the regime turned up the pressure in a certain way to try to really take control, or try to, in a certain way, reduce the space of N1 even further? Was it the protests? Was it the fact that you showed these images which changed, or is it just that the regime saw opportunities to put further pressure on N1?
Well, I think we noticed it as soon as we started to broadcasting this protest. I mean, it was much bigger. The attacks come from all over the place. So from bots on the social network, from every single government official in their statements, Vučić himself, of course, but also from tabloids. You know, I have to watch those terrific program during the whole day, because I cannot believe what those people are saying and how much they are lying about our journalists. They, for example, what they did, they took reports, and then they are saying, look how ugly they are, how stupid they are. You know, it's not just intimidation. It is like sending a message to their audience. If you dare to watch their program, don't believe them, because they are traitors, they are stupid, they are ugly. They are trying to go into people's brain to explain to them, not believe what you see, but with your eyes. You know, that was their idea, and I think they did it very successfully for the voters who for their audience. You know, because for example, that TV Informer, there you can see them on every single channel in Serbia, in every single cable operator, but then one you can see only in one. So they are covering the whole scope of Serbian TV network, and one is covering 1/3. So and with that tough language, they are amplifying the attack on our journalists. It's like it's like when you attack a lot to the people who are not thinking like you, then you expecting that the journalists have to defend themselves. Of course, sometimes we ignore it, but not all the times, and we have to label some lawsuits against those outlets who attacking our journalists.
But also, the other element besides this attack, of course, is also the attempts clearly by the government to reduce the editorial independence, to kind of intervene directly into the operation of N1. So what is what is that kind of pressure? I mean, even N1 was reporting about these attempts to put pressure by the government through the sale of the ownership of N1. So that also went directly into the in a certain way the functioning of the station.
Yes, it doesn't suit good to the journalists because they are not. They are feeling that now they're maybe attacked from inside, not only from outside, which is the worst possible scenario for someone to work with. And you know, nowadays they're just struggling to report like they did before. But I cannot talk directly about that situation because it could become very tricky for me personally because of some agreements. But you know, the position of the journalists is not great when you don't have a sense that your company actually is standing behind you. And this is something that when you want to be independent, you have to feel that you are independent. And if you lose that kind of sense, the problem is even bigger than only when you see the government is against you. I mentioned the 90s, and the situation was quite simple, you know. Milosevic was on one side, independent media was on the other side, you know. And okay, in Milosevic's time, journalists were killed. During the bombing, they killed Slavko Čuruvija, and a few years during the war, Dada Vojasinovic, journalist, also killed. But those two cases actually never been solved at the end, and nobody was jailed because of those murders. But on the other hand, Milosevic didn't care about small outlets. This government now is trying to stop any single critical voices in Serbia, and this is the main difference. I mean, Milosevic tried to close B92 at the time, but then reopen it again because of the pressure of international pressure. But now we are not seeing that kind of international pressure, or we are not seeing that in the phase that it's not just declaration about media freedom. And I think what independent journalism in Serbia needs these days is definitely a bigger support of international community towards the accusation of this kind of horrific incidents, and trying from the government. You know what bothers me mostly, when the officials from Serbia coming into European Union and saying what do you want, everything is fine. Those media are haters. They're just doing that because they don't love Vučić. But it's so, and maybe someone in Brussels believes in that. I don't know. But it's just a simple lie that is trying to hide the very simple truth that the government is trying to suppress the media freedom in Serbia more subtle than before, and maybe not so visible from and not so clear, but they're trying to do that.
Mm-hmm. That brings me to my last question, and then I would open up to the floor, and that would be exactly, you've said it already very clearly, that you would hope for a more strong response from the European Union or Germany or other EU member states. And so what would you think would be the best ways in which the European Union or Germany or other governments in the European Union or countries more broadly can support independent media? What is it what they should prioritize? What are the steps where you could say this really would make a difference in strengthening, again, independent media?
Well, first of all, the quicker reaction on the incidents. The organizations like Reporters Without Borders and European Federation of Journalists, they are reacting very promptly. But we are not seeing the reaction, for example, from European Commission. When we ask the question the spokesman person from the European Commission are giving such a declarative statements that meaning actually nothing, and not influencing on what government is doing. That's one thing. On the other thing, I will mention the situation about the regulatory body for electronic media, which European Union now is pushing towards the deal between independent and pro-government candidates in the body. But from the beginning, I'm saying that it's a hypocrisy because that body should be independent completely. And it looks to me that European Union will be satisfied with a proportion of 5 pro-government and 4 independent candidates. And even Vučić openly said, I'm not going to give them majority in the independent regulatory body. So that organization that should be really independent and to run and punish the cases that I mentioned on the TV station cannot operate if they are in favor of the government. It should be independent completely. But by saying independent, Vučić will say they're opposition. You know, they are not mine. It's all about control, and that's what actually worries me. That at the end, European Union will be satisfied with this kind of agreements with the government. And of course, they will, check the box and say, okay, that condition is done, but it's not really done, and will not be done if it is not fully independent body.
Thanks. So we'll open up for questions now. We have Adelheid Falke. So I'll just repeat the key points, just because we make sure that it's hearable on the recording. So a certain way the role of N1, especially looking ahead a little bit on the future, the next months, elections, and also more concretely what can politicians in Germany, media in Germany, and also academics in German language area do about the situation beyond what you've talked about the Commission.
Well, first of all, because thank you for the questions, and I will answer on how can you help. I think first of all that the media, German media, should focus much more on situation in Serbia. I'm not saying that they were not. I personally gave a lot of statements to German media, but the reports and the interest actually from the media is very rare. And as we are approaching probably the elections, but I will not believe in what Vučić is announcing completely. But as we are approaching to the election, the atmosphere will be much more tough than it is right now. But it is all, even now is very, very tough. But the support, first of all, it should be much more frequent reporting, independent reporting from German media. German politicians should ask the question to their colleagues in Belgrade much more frequently about all these cases, and the politicians can pick up from the reports from German media if they don't believe in Serbian local media. So I will come up to the elections. It is a very strange game because and how is confusing for anyone in Europe to understand what's going on. I will explain you in two examples. One is that Vučić just 1 week ago on the rally in Belgrade announced that he will step down in a weeks. And yesterday he said, first there will be a parliamentary elections and then there will be a presidential election. So he fooled all public the world public actually, because Reuters, CNN, everybody of course report about this possible resignation, but now he's changing the topic. So there are people who are not believe that the election will come up before the next year, when it's actually a time for presidential election, because his mandate will expire next year. So I cannot tell you that what he said yesterday is true, but the earliest time for the election will be probably November, and if it will not be in November, then it will be next spring, early spring probably. How political scene will look like, we are not sure yet. We have some surveys that are actually saying that the student list, which we don't know who are the people right now in that student list, will very much oppose the ruling party right now, and plus the opposition, the pro-EU opposition, is announcing that they are going to go with themselves, but none of this can be measured or predicted until we see when the election will be and who's going to represent the opposition. All the other things are really like playing some game. And concerning N1, I rather not to talk about it. I can privately tell you later about this.
Okay, thank you, Jens. Okay, so the big success story, or a success story which highlights what actually independent media can achieve, and the second one is what's next for you.
The success story is when you, as a journalist, feel and see by the reaction from the people, that people believe in you, and then also that people needs you as an independent media. Why I'm saying this? Because very often in the commentary on the social network we can see, all right, if they close you down, we're gonna give you funds and make your own media. So we can never heard that kind of trust from the audience, because audience, I say, I will take this information, the other day I will take from other source, but this is something that we feel that audience and public really need, and very often I heard people who are saying, what we are going to do without you, and how can we continue to live like we used to live without this kind of independent information. So this is something that really gives you a feeling that your work is actually meaning something, and that's why otherwise it will be a job like any else. If it will be only earning the money from the commercials and everything else, it's not the way how I'm used to do work, and also my colleagues do. So this is something that gives me a feeling that none of this problems and hard life is useless, and that's why I love this job. I think.
So what next?
What
Stay in the job.
Yes. So,
Maybe you answered it already.
Yeah,
Bye.
well, we of course will try to do and to find some some way out. We'll see. You know, there are some ideas. You know, maybe with a little help from the friends, from the audience, we'll see.
Okay, Johanna.
Thank you for mentioning the Hungary. You know, the Hungary is very, and we are looking into it because the case was even harder than in Serbia because there were no free space. Even Orban shut down and take over the web portals, which are, you know, of course, much more smaller influences than anything with the traditional media you will have. But on the other hand, the audience in Hungary switch to digital platforms to be informed at the time. And what I've heard from my colleagues who've been reporting from Hungary, they said in every single cafe you will watch the YouTube channel of I don't know, Partizan TV, I think that's the name. You know, I said they are not watching the regular cable channels. No, they're watching YouTube channel of with the reports from Peter Magyar at the time in the election campaign, and you then realize that people will find a way how to be informed even in those cases. I remember during the 90s when Milosevic shut down B92 or then limited the area of the transmitter of the radio program. It was a radio program. In Belgrade you cannot see any independent TV station at the time, but radio program was very important, you know, because people then were listening what's going on the street, where are the protests and so on. So people went out with handmade antennas and tried to find the signal. So people will find the way how to be informed, but we as a journalists have to find a way where we're gonna put the information and how we're gonna survive. And of course, I'm a little bit tired of this struggle that is going on for more than 30 years with a very small pauses after the Milosevic fell down. But of course, it's the life, and you know, it becomes a little bit boring. I mean, boring to do all the same thing all the time.
I think we have time maybe for one or so last question. Yes, please.
Maybe you are right when we are seeing, you know, members of the parliament, you know, Mr. Mijatovic is very often our guest, and what they are doing, then they are attacking personal those MPs, for example. But if from the governmental level the critic will come, then it will change the thing. What we are seeing right now is, for example, Ursula von der Leyen coming into Belgrade and saying, "My dear friend Alexander, thank you for your, I don't know, work." And the people in the Serbia are seeing that as a huge present to Vučić, and they are not hearing the critics. And if they're hearing the critics, they're mostly like, you know, not direct, not concrete. You know, that's the problem. It should be very direct on the specific cases, open critics, to avoid diplomacy in the gloves. You know, I think that's the issue, because they are feeling very safe when diplomacy is in the glove.
So I think if there's no more question in the room, I think we can maybe continue our conversation
Yeah, of
informally over at the reception, which is to follow now. Just like to see if Christian, if there are any more announcements to be made. I just wanted to thank you also for sharing your insight, and I think in a certain way, I think there are 2 points which I take as very encouraging. I mean, the first one, I think the message with that if citizens want to be informed, they are curious, and citizens are thirsty for reliable information, and that is something which authoritarian regimes don't manage to destroy ever. From any record of authoritarian regimes, there's always that demand of citizens. And I think it's very important that you mentioned that. And there's also always journalists who are willing to provide that information. And no matter how much repression there is, there's always a way around that. And that's, I think, one of the things which is encouraging for all the difficulties which is faced, which of course we hope will be temporary and will end, and there will be elections, and there will be moments, opportunities for changing it, which will be difficult, of course, as we see also in Hungary. But that demand is there, and the supply is also there. And I think that's maybe the encouraging message to take from this conversation we've had today.